Hello everyone. Happy Independence Day to all. Thank you everyone for taking out the time to be here with us today. It is great to be amongst a cohort of motivated students and professionals alike who are planning for their future professional education. I'm Akshita Sangle, Center Head at Harjai Global Gurukul, that is HGG. Welcome to the HGG webinar on how to prepare for MBA admissions abroad. HGG has been guiding and counseling students for over 15 years and has exponential following of students who are successful world over. With its excellent network and links with a wide range of educational institutes in India and around the world. HGG holds regular seminars, provides advisory services, and promotes joint ventures in new areas of education and growth. HGG is a regular participant at international education fairs, exhibitions, and information sharing through the media. At HGG, students are able to procure all services under one roof, right from the selection of the course to the visa counseling and transcultural adaptation. In January 2019, we have opened an office in US, Tampa, Florida, which puts us in an unique position to assist the student in every way. And our motto is, what is the best fit for the student? Before we go ahead, I want to inform everyone that we'll be having a 20 minutes question answer session at the end of this webinar. Kindly drop your questions in the chat section below. We'll be addressing to them. Today, we have a very interesting mix of panelists, and I would like to introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is an industry expert, Ms. Aarti Harjai, founder and CEO of HGG. With over 15 years of experience in guiding students and professionals alike for the educational needs in India and abroad, she has done her master's in social work from Delhi University and business communication technology from Sunnyvale College, California. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Aarti Harjai to give us an overview on how to prepare for MBA admissions abroad.
Thank you so much, Akshita. Welcome, everybody. And I would like to start by saying that MBA is one of the most sought after degrees worldwide that students and professionals from all walks of life can pursue, be it arts, commerce, or science. Now, the first questions that I always like to answer for all students is why, when, and where? So, why do you study an MBA abroad? Now, most of the top world-ranked business schools are located in UK and US, with a few in Canada, Singapore, and Europe. Universities abroad allow a student to follow their dreams. You could do dual degrees, you could study interdisciplinary subjects within your MBA. But here I would like to say, I share the happiness that now with the new education policy that has been announced by the government, I'm sure that these changes are also going to come here back in India. Now, the benefits of study abroad would not only be the state-of-the-art facilities or the best professors and clubs, but the most important thing would be having students worldwide as a cohort, as a peer group, from whom you actually learn. So, for all, I would say, especially for professionals, all great business startup ideas originate from Campus Connects. Now, it broadens your horizons, you learn people skill, and most important, an MBA abroad will open doors to global opportunities and careers worldwide. Here, of course, the investment is huge, no doubt, but I can say that the return on investment is assured if you make an informed decision, you make a careful decision. There are countries where you can go, where you can study, take a post-study work, and also get a PR. We all know that Canada and Australia are always in everybody's minds because they allow a work visa as well as PR. I'm glad to share with all of you now UK has also started the PR, which they are launching from 2020, and they announced in February 2019. So even if you do your MBA abroad and come back to your own country, you come back with an international exposure and experience. So you will definitely have an edge over the others. Now, when is another very important question. I get a lot of these questions. Is this the right time for me to quit my job and do an MBA? Or should I continue my MBA immediately after my graduation? Well, my answer is, if you are planning to do your MBA in India, do it directly after your undergrad. But if you're planning to do an MBA abroad, please take some work experience. Now, the reason I say it is that abroad, an MBA is basically a degree that is done mid-career, because you learn more from your cohort than you learn actually in your lectures. You learn more from the projects that you do. Whereas in India, the situation is very different. You do your undergrad, sit for the CAT, get into the IIMs or whichever universities and do your MBA and you're good to go. But abroad, it's not so. So if you decide that you want to study management immediately after your graduation abroad, choose an MIM instead. That is Masters in Management. Where, the last is where. Now, I can just tell you, it's very simple. You either choose a top university or a top city. Is as simple as that. I will just give you a quick example. Wharton Business School is situated in Philadelphia, which is not the business hub of the world. Okay, but still, if you get a chance to go to Wharton, your career is going to boom. Whereas if you go to Greenwich University, which is a very good university, but may not necessarily be a top university, but it's situated in London. So it is definitely going to give you a lot of leeway. So you either choose a top university or a top city where MBAs are concerned. Now let's go to the next, which is, what is the best fit MBA for you? How do you know that? Well, ask yourself this question. What are your post-MBA goals? This is very important. Do you want to enter back into the industry at a senior position, or do you want to have a startup? Accordingly, you will choose the correct MBA. Now, the ranking and accreditation are of great importance. I want to add here, there are so many different rankings available. You should be very careful as to which rankings you use. It's very simple. For UK, it is the complete university guide that you have to use. For US universities, it is the US News rankings. And for the worldwide, Europe, South Pacific, Asia, it is the QS rankings. So this is how you should actually divide it. Now, accreditations, we all know the MBA has an AMBA accreditation, that is the Association of MBAs. But here again, it is only for the work experience MBA or the executive MBAs. The freshers MBA do not get an AMBA accreditation and do not need it either. Now, class profile, you have to check the class profile. If you're applying this year in 2020, check the class profile of 2019. Are there similar kind of students? Are there fresher students? Are there very senior students? So you have to match up your profile with the profile of the class last year before you choose an MBA. And most important, I cannot stress the importance of an alumni network. You must always check the alumni for any business school that you choose, because your references that you're going to get from your alumni are going to go a long way in your business as well as in your jobs. The alma mater is extremely important. Now let's go to the next, which is the important factors in deciding the career path. So I always tell my students, there are 3 factors. One is your long-term plan. The other is your budget. Third is your profile. Now, long-term plan. It's very simple. You have to decide, are you going there to do the course and come back, or you want to do the course, get a work visa and PR? So you need to choose your country accordingly, according to the rules and regulations on completing the course. 2, budget. You've got to be very careful what your budget is. Because if your budget is minimum, you need a budget for living plus a 2-year course in US or Australia of 50 lakhs. If you have it, great. If you don't, then look at other avenues like UK and Canada, because both of them also give you PR. And third, which is extremely important, is your profile. Of course, there are countries which are very liberal, like UK and US. They look at the holistic profile. They will not look at only GPA. So if your GPA is not very great, you could still get into a very good university in both UK as well as US. But Canada, they're very tough. Yeah. So let's go to the next. What does a university want to see in an application? So once you're done with choosing, that yes, you've decided you're going for an MBA, how do you know how to prepare basically? Well, let me tell you, there are three most important things in any MBA application. One is your GPA. Please never forget the importance of what your marks are, no matter where you apply. Two, your exams, that's your GMAT, IELTS, etc. And some universities will also accept GRE. And third is the profile. Now, for freshers, obviously, a profile would definitely just mean doing projects, shadowing professionals, doing internships, writing a blog, taking up a social initiative, maybe making a portfolio in case it is required. But for professionals, it is very different. It would include the kind of budgets you're handling. What is the team size that reports to you? Have you done a project in a full cycle? What are the kind of clients that you are serving? Are they international? So that is the kind of reflection you have to give in your application. Now let me go to the next two most important things, that is your essay and recommendation. Let me first talk about the essay. I cannot tell you how important they are in an MBA application, more so because it is basically the make or break of your application. Okay, so an essay is all about why you want to choose this university. You have to do an absolute in-depth research why you're choosing a particular business school. Now, for example, if you wanted to have a startup, you would obviously choose a university which has an incubator cell in it. Like example, University of Manchester, University of Newcastle in UK. And we know Stanford, UMass, a lot of universities in US also have, but you've got to make sure, so you've got to match up what you want to do with the university you're choosing. Okay, so I'm not only going to name the top Ivy Leagues, Boston University, UMass, as I said, they also have incubator cells. Now, supposing you wanted to do finance, okay, Harvard or Wharton or Kellogg are not the only, business schools that are excellent for finance. You have a lot of other business schools in UK as well as US. You have Aston University, you have Exeter, you have Bath, wherein even if you have a first class, you can get in, provided you have a very good profile. And in US, you have universities like University of Florida, University of Illinois. So we can give you all the choices and we can do a complete search and selection for you. So in the essay, you've got to bring all this out. What are your aspirations, who you really are, and you have to demonstrate how the university is best fit for you and how you're going to add to the diversity of the classroom. In the end, for the essay, I would like to say, here is your chance to share what you've not been able to mention in the entire application. So that's the importance of the essay. Let's go to the recommendation. Now, recommendation, again, I feel, as important as the essay, because here is a chance for the business school to review your application through a third party angle. So you have to have an excellent rapport with your recommender. For fresher applications, for either fresher MBA or the MIMs, it is always an academic recommendation, whereas for professionals, both will be work recommendations. So you've got to have excellent rapport, because very often for an MBA, there is a very lengthy questionnaire that the universities will be asking your recommender to fill in. Remember, it has to be a very honest evaluation and not only praise. And how it should also talk about how you overcome your shortcomings. Now let's go to a little, I'll just touch upon difference between an executive and a freshers MBA and an MIM. So basically, in executive MBAs, as I said, done mid-career, you need work experience, whereas a freshers MBA is going to be a continuation of your academics. Value in India is definitely higher for a freshers MBA, abroad not so much. I'm not saying you can't do it, but as a counselor, I would not advise it. So whereas an executive MBA would have very high value. Now you have to remember you're going to, put in your time, money, and energy. So you have to calculate your return on investment. Therefore, as I said, very informed decision and know whether you can take a break from your career or not. And if you have very less experience, like within 1 year, then go definitely for a MIM, as you can apply within a year. I want to now touch upon specializations. Next slide, please. So the most common is the general management course. Okay. So of all management, it is the MBA general course, which students learn variety of management skills and perspectives. Okay. In any industry, from human resource to marketing. In international, I'm going to touch upon all these. In international management, a specialized, this is where you actually, it's a specialized MBA in international management is perfect for business students who intend to aspire to work abroad or in multinational companies. An MBA in strategy, here strategy offers an insight into how successful decisions are made, and you learn about business development, consulting, risk management. This is what it is all about. And an MBA in consulting, it is one of the most sought after skills in the business world, and it will empower you to kind of enter into a lucrative industry post your MBA, where you help clients manage their companies more successfully. That is what is consulting. Now, can we go into the next slide? So the finance leadership MBA is obviously for those who are already in the finance field. You may not have a finance degree, but if you have the experience, you can go for it. It is usually done by CFOs, financial controllers, finance managers, and you basically study statistics, analytics, and accounting and more. Now, entrepreneurship is very interesting. I get a lot of students who are interested in MBA entrepreneurship. And if you need help in getting your startup off the ground, you will choose this, or you want to join your family business. It teaches you basically critical management skills, and business development, give you business development skills as well. Now, marketing again is very, very popular. All students who want to go into B2B or B2C businesses look at it as an option. Operations management, we all know it is for those who are looking at supply chain or logistics, where you actually focus on planning, organizing, and managing production to maximize efficiency. The last is, of course, an MBA in IT, wherein specialized MBA puts an MBA graduate at cutting edge of design and flow of information technology. If you want to learn how to manage data and the flow of data within companies, this is the MBA for you. Now, if you noticed in my slides, I've actually written down all the top 5 worldwide MBAs in these particular specializations, but I don't want you all to feel that these are the only universities. I've just written them for your reference. Basically, you have to choose the university that is best fit for you. Can we go on the next slide? Because I'm going to talk about what is the best fit for you. I've just randomly written down names of some universities. I want to tell you that depending on what your profile is, if you make an informed decision to go to a university that matches your post-MBA goals, you are definitely going to make a success of it. I'll just give an example. Like you can see HALT US here. Now, one of my students, Dikshant Kanodia, went to HALT to study his MIM program, Masters in Management, after which within HALT, he did a fast track dual degree in business analytics and managed to get his 3-year OPT as it turned into a STEM course. And today, he's working with Microsoft. In fact, he got his Microsoft offer in COVID times. I have another student. She went to Macquarie to do her MBA. She's very well settled in Australia. I have students in, a vice president of a company here in India who went to Stratolite to do his MBA. He's settled in the UK. So we have ISB in India as well as one of the options. So, you have a lot of other university and you can see what is the best fit for you basically. Next, please. So my advice to you, all students out there, is education is the most important think that you can actually invest in, where your return on investment is absolutely assured. Your students who are commencing their courses or are midway in courses in 2020 or 21 will actually enter the job market when the entire economic crisis is over, and they will have no problem. Secondly, I would also like to advise all of you to keep all your options over. Even though MBA, IELTS, everything has been waived as of now for 2020-21 admissions, I want to tell you, the moment the vaccine comes out, they're going to bring back these exams. So please be prepared and definitely see how you as a student and professional can contribute in COVID times. Now, I just have a short surprise for all of you. I have a student, I'm proud to announce, I have an HGG student. His name is Manasvi Srivastav, and he has got admission into the Global MBA at INSEAD. And he is actually from IIT Bombay. And he, after completing his engineering, he joined Sony Japan, after which he joined Wireless Cars at Gothenburg, Sweden. So now he's going to join INSEAD. Here's a short video. Please, if you could play the video.
Hello, my name is Manasvi Shivastav, and I recently got admitted to the Global MBA program at INSEAD. Harjai Global Gurukul played an important role throughout the application process. Despite me being based in Sweden, Ms. Aarti and her staff sent me constant reminders for every deadline and reviewed the application at every step of the way. With their experience, I was able to refine the application and bring it up to standard. Given my experience with them, I would strongly recommend their services to anyone applying for a top-ranked global MBA program like the one offered by INSEAD. With that said, all the very best.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am, for sharing your expert advice. So our second panelist today is Uday sir. Although he is an engineer and a commerce graduate both, Uday sir has been coaching students for tests like TOEFL, SAT, GRE, GMAT for over 25 years now. His excellence is that he understands the student very well and tailors his method and material to suit the students. Hundreds of the successful students are abroad today, many even settled. He has also taught business communication and management to CA students and authored 2 books on that. I would like to invite Uday sir to give us an overview on how to prepare for GMAT.
Thank you, Akshata, for that wonderful introduction. Even I didn't know most of it. And thank you, Aarti ma'am, for inviting me. Good evening, everyone. When Aarti ma'am asked me if I would do this, of course I would, I said. And then after the call, I was wondering what I should speak about. So I had 2 broad options. One was give you the normal information, the routine information about the content, the structure, the format, and other logistical information about the GMAT exam. The other broader option was that I could speak on the mentality and the attitude required for preparation to get a very high score. Obviously, when you are here, you must be aspiring for a high score, something more than 650, I'm sure, out of 800, for those who don't know. So then I decided to choose a letter because most of the information, the logistical information about the content and course, they are going to be the same for everyone, so you can't do anything about it. Plus, they are very wonderfully available on the official website. Although this is not to say that you may not ask me questions about that. Please feel free to ask me questions, even about things that I may not speak or share with you. But primarily, I want to talk to you about the kind of attitude you must have, the kind of mentality, the learning patterns that you have to develop, and such. So let's move on to the first slide. This can help both of us to understand things better. Yes, can we have the first slide? In the first slide, I have given you the name of the official website, mba.com. I want to insist that you trust only this website and get all your information from here. Do not trust anything else. Everything you need to know is given here, and everything you don't need to know is given elsewhere. So don't look for other websites. We can easily move on to the next slide now, and I'll start with the main thing. Before we start any journey, we have to understand the purpose behind doing that. The purpose or the rationale behind this particular exam, GMAT. Next slide, please. This particular exam, GMAT, is twofold. One, they don't trust our exams, right? They don't trust any exams in the world for that matter, because not being sarcastic, but because the standards and the yardsticks are different for everybody. Secondly, they want to see, now get this right, they want to see how well you do in their GMAT. Yes, they have designed the GMAT which is suitable to determine whether you are a student or an aspirant of caliber for MBA. So the questions are designed in such a way, full of critical thinking, and they want to see under time pressure how well you perform in that, in the task that they have given you. So if you understand this, your preparation is halfway there. You are halfway there in the beginning of your preparation. We can move on to the next slide and come to the real crux of the matter that I want to share with you. Students often ask, is such a high score possible? Right? Out of 800, 750 and 760 and 770 we hear. So students ask, is it a possible score? Is it achievable, or is it just being over ambitious? The answer to that is very obvious. It is possible, but a certain type of attitude is required, a certain type of mindset is required. You have to change your learning patterns, you have to change your cognitive paradigms. So that is what I really want to talk to you about. So when I say attitude, it's a very cliched word. So I'll define attitude, what I mean by attitude in this particular context, in the context of GMAT. In this context, by attitude, I mean the 3 F. Focus, the first one. You have to focus on your preparation, which means that you have to get totally involved in the work. You have to kind of get obsessed by it. That is your everything for some time. And if you get happiness from this hard work, be sure that you are focused. That is one sure yardstick to decide whether you are focused or not. Second is follow-up. We tend to forget things. That's why we have these slides, right? We tend to forget things, and repeatedly you'll have to go and revise your things. That is what I mean by follow-up. That is what follow-up means. You cannot tend to forget things. Third is follow through. Do not, please, I repeat, do not leave anything incomplete. Whatever you do, you can decide that. Whatever you do, please take it through, complete it, finish it. You have to be in the mindset of a learner, I said earlier. By that I mean, I'll define that again clearly. By that I mean, you have to be motivated, right? You have to be constantly motivated. When you start preparation, in the initial days, the tempo will be very high. You'll have the freshest of ball pens, the freshest of books, very good material, very enthusiastic about preparation, isn't it? It happens with everybody and everything, right? Then it wanes after some time. Don't allow that to happen. That fire has to be there throughout. And unless that fire is there, you are not going to get anything above 650. Believe me, all your hard work and intelligence and everything else will get you up to 600 or 650. Even without too many books, even with only one book, you can get that score. But to go beyond 650 is a tough task. You have to shift your paradigms. You have to be ready to accept new ways of learning, right? You don't just have to learn new maths or new English, you also have to learn new ways of learning them. So that is what I say by getting the mindset right. This is not to belittle the importance of the content. You have to become good at the content, obviously. That is what the bulk of your preparation is going to be about. Only mentality is again not going to help you, the correct mentality and attitude. So I'd like to summarize this in 5 T's that you can see here: the tips, the traps, the tools, and the tricks and techniques which are very germane to GMAT preparation. You have to learn them. Most good material will talk about them very clearly. Most teachers will talk about them, I'm sure. So you have to be very clear about these things. And with the right attitude, I'm sure you can go a long way. We can move on to the next slide, which is in a way connected to what I was telling you. Whenever we start on anything new, there are going to be teething problems, there are going to be barriers which you have to overcome. There are going to be old ways of doing things, set ways of doing things, which are not going to serve you anymore. But our tendency is that we are not able to leave them. So that is what I want to share with you. Also, there are 3 main barriers that you can see on the screen, the slide here. First is the halo and horn effect. By that it means students, and this I've seen a lot, students, they tend to do the things which they like doing. Like for example, if somebody likes problem solving, he'll keep on doing that. Somebody likes sentence correction, he'll keep on doing that at the cost of preparing for other things. Don't let that happen. Horn effect is you try to avoid or escape from things that you don't like so much. For example, there are students who shun reading comprehension. So they'll, kind of keep away from that. Don't let that happen. Don't make any favorites. All are equally important. All 5 types of questions, 3 in English and 2 in maths, equally important. The other thing which I said earlier about close-mindedness, which I implied, I said you have to learn new methods and you have to learn how to learn new methods. It's a twofold thing. So students often become close-minded. Even if you do 10 books with the same way of thinking and the same methods, you will get stuck on a score. Do not fool yourself by thinking that doing more questions and more books will increase your score. They will not increase it beyond, say, 600 or 650 if you don't change your learning patterns. Another problem is information overload. There are so many books, so much material that a student doesn't know what to do and what not to do. Again, for that, the answer is very simple. I'm very sure about this. Trust only the official guides and the official material. You will find everything that you need to find on mba.com. Do not trust anything else. The material there is sufficient. At the most, you may take 2 or 3 different editions of the official guide. You have to abandon your set ways of doing things. Certain methods in maths which served us in the school may not work now. They may work, of course, at the end of 5 minutes, they may work, and we don't have that kind of time. Time is a luxury in these exams. Most of you know that. That is a pressure they want to create to see whether you are MBA material or not. You have to discard certain old ways of doing things. Be it grammar or be it reading comprehension, doesn't matter what. And most of all, and now we'll come to the real crux of what I am discussing with you. Let's move on to the next slide first. Before I share that with you, just one small thing, some myths regarding the test. The score of GMAT is out of 800, as you know that, but really it begins not from 0, but from 200. So the score is the range between 200 and 800. So essentially, you get a score out of 600. Now, they don't talk in that way. They don't like our saying this, but that is what happens. About 65 something questions, 600 marks. But all questions don't have the same marks. That brings us to the next thing, adaptive. Some easier questions are of fewer marks and some difficult questions are of more marks. The computer will adapt to your difficulty level and give you the next question. The myth connected here is if you answer a question correctly, students think the next question will be difficult. It is not so. The truth is if you answer a question wrongly, the next one will definitely be easier. Okay, they can't keep on increasing the difficulty level, or otherwise you'll end up scoring 1200 out of 800, and certainly that's not going to happen. Third myth, GMAT is not online. It's a computer-based exam. Although recently there is a GMAT online version during these testing times, probably till December, where you can take GMAT, a proctored GMAT, from the comfort of your home if you're not able to go to the test center. That's a temporary interim arrangement, GMAT online. The paper style is same. It only does not have essay writing. We'll talk about that more. Let's move on to the next slide. So how do you become test savvy? That is why I've given the slide this name. In order to be test savvy, you have to realize only one thing. This is the whole secret of the whole talk that I want to share with you. Please remember, GMAT mathematics, GMAT quantitative is highly rich in its verbal quality. The English of GMAT maths, the English quality of GMAT maths is very high. So don't think by dint of sheer maths knowledge or by being good at maths, you will be able to crack GMAT maths. No, you have to have good English even for GMAT maths. Otherwise, the questions will stump you. What about GMAT English, you will ask them. GMAT English is highly critical. Critical thinking is a thinking which we are not used to normally. I don't even see 10% of the people who think critically. I'm not joking, I really mean that. So this is something that you have to develop. You should know the meanings of the words like conclusions, assumptions, inferences, or implications, data, fact, judgment, and all the differences between them. You have to learn to think critically. That brings us to another thing, essay writing. Essay writing is not scored or scaled out of the main 800 marks. It's separately scaled, but the argument analysis, there's only one essay, it says everything. That is the kind of thinking that you have to develop. If you can be good at this argument analysis, which is normally ignored, GMAT verbal is going to be very easy for you. Give them what you want. That is the whole thing. They want to test you in these things. They want to see how well you do this particular task. So you have to learn to get good at that. You don't have to make favorites and unfavorites, if I may use the word. You don't have to do that. Treat all equally, as I said, and develop your critical thinking. That is one thing, that is a magic key that is going to help you more than anything else for GMAT. And now we can move on to the last slide, where I will sum and summarize before what I'm sharing with you turns into a sermon or a speech. Preparing wisely and smartly, I've called this. So what do you do that? How you do that? The first thing is you have to adhere to the time. Don't indulge yourself in the luxury of taking 5 minutes to solve a question, getting full pleasure out of the rough work. Don't do that. You cannot afford that. You have to learn new methods which you have never done in your life. You have to learn new methods. Forget new maths or new English. You have to first learn new methods of doing this. And as I said earlier, do not repeat lovables. There are things students love doing. Don't fall in that trap. focus on your weaker areas. And the sum of substance of everything that I have shared with you or tried to share with you is you have to develop speed and accuracy both. Only speed or only accuracy are not going to help you. You have to develop both. If you can do that, you will be really a right candidate for GMAT, because most students get stuck between 650 and 720. To go above 650 is very difficult, and to go above 720 is really requires a different type of learning pattern, a different paradigm that I said earlier, a different cognitive process, as they call it, as psychologists. So that is exactly what you have to do. You'll be wondering, what has all this psychology got to do with you? And that is what they are really testing. These types of questions are merely tools to test you. But what they are really testing is these qualities, your attitude, your capabilities under pressure, how quickly you can do things, how you can approach new ways of approaching questions. So at the end of everything, I'll say again, please develop speed and accuracy, and you are there, almost there. So thank you very much for listening so patiently. I hope you were listening patiently, and I hope I've been able to help you clear certain things. Thank you again, and I'll return the mic to Akshata, please.
Thank you for sharing expert advice, sir. And now we are proud to introduce our next panelist, Sahil. Sahil is a graduate from NTU, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and currently he works in the capacity of the Director of Marketing at HCPL. He scored a 760 in the GMAT and 110 in TOEFL, which granted him a smooth admission into NTU. Before NTU, Sahil worked as a tech analyst at Credit Suisse, the world's largest Swiss bank. Today, he will talk with all our attendees as a student of the GMAT exam. Over to you, Sahil.
Thanks, Akshata. Thanks for the warm welcome. Now, as Akshata mentioned, I have a 760 on my GMAT, which puts me in the 99th percentile. After getting this score, I was able to get into NTU in their entrepreneurship program, which ranks 9th in the world. I have to thank Uday sir for this, since he's the one who taught me. Now, along with the GMAT, I have 110 out of 120 score on my TOEFL as well. So I'll just talk for 5 minutes, and I'll talk about two things. First is my admission, which was helped by the HGG team. And next is my GMAT, which was helped by Uday sir. For my admissions, I was a unique case. I wanted to do an MBA specializing in entrepreneurship, and not many colleges offered that. So out of the ones I applied to, I got into NYU, NTU, and Duke. Now I chose NTU because the course was of a higher standard and more suitable to my needs. One thing I want to highlight with MBA admissions is that all colleges have their own format, which means, and I applied to 9 colleges, which means that I had to research and write 9 different essays. And trust me, it takes a very long time for each of them. So make a point to be mentally prepared to do a lot of work after your GMAT as well. Now, IGG helped me through the entire application process, and especially with the essays where I really needed a lot of help. Now coming to this next part, which is a GMAT. For GMAT, before I say anything, I'd like to tell you all that it's different for different people. I've given my advice to a lot of fellow students, but the points they take away have always been different. I believe that almost everyone, except for a few geniuses maybe, gets stuck at a particular score while studying for the GMAT. So mine was 680. So this was after 2 months of practice. Now at 680, I was stuck for another month and a half. I kept giving practice tests and I kept scoring either a 670 or a 680, never above that. After getting really frustrated, I literally Googled, why is my score stuck at 680 on the GMAT? And I found loads of chains of conversations around it and realized I'm not the only one. So after going through all those chats, I've found out one thing that I'd been ignoring in GMAT. So in GMAT, verbal is divided into 3 types, right? Sentence correction, reading comprehension, and critical reasoning. But each section is further divided into subsections, subtypes. Sorry, for instance, sentence correction has subject verb agreement, idioms, and so on. So mostly around 8 subtypes. So when you reach a threshold score, you are usually very, very good at 5 to 6 of those subtypes and really bad at maybe 2 or 3. So once I figured that out, I revisited all my practice tests and I analyzed, and turned out that my accuracy with idioms was below 20%. So once I knew that, I focused only on these weak points, and that's how I was able to cross my threshold score. So this is my generic advice to all of you. But if you have any further specific questions about GMAT or TOEFL, or how my MBA admission process went through, then you can ask those in the Q&A session later. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us, Sahil. Now we'll be commencing with the question answer session and we'll be answering to the questions asked by the attendees. So we have many questions here, ma'am. We have first question for you, Aarti ma'am. What is the eligibility criteria in getting admission in masters for 10th, 12th and graduation, as a student has a low score of 60 marks in 12th standard?
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
What is the eligibility criteria for getting admission in masters for 10th, 12th and graduation, as a student has less below 60 in 12th standard?
Yeah, I can see the question in the panel.
Yes.
Well, I would say, as I already said in my talk, that there is something for every student and something that is worth your while to invest in. So yes, you may not have the best of marks, but if you have a good profile, you portray your application well, you can get into a university which is worth your while to invest in. And you can, I think it is Rahul who has asked this question, and he can definitely get in touch with us where we can do a search and selection and give him options, for him according to his marks. And then he can decide how he would like to go ahead. Definitely there are options.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have again, second question is, work experience mandatory for all MBA colleges?
No, work experience is not mandatory for all MBA colleges. In fact, there are a lot of MBA colleges abroad that will take you directly after your graduation. But as I said in my talk, it is preferable to take an experience if you want to do an MBA abroad, because that is what really gives value to the MBA in markets abroad, be it UK, US, Australia, anywhere, and Canada as well. So preferably that, I would say it's not mandatory, yes, not at all, but preferred.
Thank you. Ma'am, we again have one more question here, and that's for Uday sir. Sir, any tips for quant specifically?
I have shared the most important tip for quant, and that is, please be aware, please be conscious at every moment that GMAT quant, I don't know why I keep on saying that GMAT quant is not about only maths. The English quality of GMAT quant is very high. That is the most important tip I can share with you about GMAT quant especially. Because otherwise you will be stumped by the kind of answer that normally is given. I'll share that also with you. There are certain areas, there are certain things in mathematics that you need to get very good at. All that is about the content of GMAT quant. The best way you can do it is pick up any official guide and go through 100 questions and decide. These are actual questions. Go through 100 questions and decide for yourself. You do not need to trust anybody else, not even me. Decide for yourself what the pattern is and what are the questions, what are the types, rather, categories of areas that keep on repeating. That is the best way you will be able to help yourself. I hope I have satisfied your query.
Thank you, sir. So again, we have one more question for Aarti ma'am. Aarti ma'am, we have a student asking, he is doing his postgraduate program in management, from an autonomous university and is expecting to get it finished by 2021. So, will he be eligible for a master's in the UK for further studies?
Absolutely. It is Nick Fernandez.
Yes.
Nick, you will be definitely eligible to apply for a master's, because the rule for applying in the UK is that you have to apply for a progressive course, and a postgraduate diploma is lower than a master's. So you will be progressing. You can definitely apply, avail the 2-year work visa, as well as apply for a PR. Yes.
So we have Piyush asking, he has 3 years of undergrad degree from India. Will that be valid in abroad for an MBA?
Absolutely. It is going to be valid. Even Harvard accepts a 3-year bachelor's degree, to your surprise.
So we have Pawan asking if the job experience are mandatory for an MBA admission abroad.
This is, I think, the same question as I said. Is job experience for MBA admissions abroad? It is not mandatory, but advised. If you want to do management abroad, you can do, as I said, an MIM. It will probably get you a higher paid job than a fresher's MBA.
So we have Rohit Jha again asking, he has around 9 to 10 years of experience. So does he qualify for an executive MBA?
Absolutely, he qualifies. Manasvi had 7 years experience, the one who got into INSEAD. Even up to 12, 15 years, you're absolutely okay to apply for an executive MBA.
We have next question for Uday sir. Uday sir, what has been your highest scorer?
780. And that is not my highest score. That
Yeah.
is of the student, but I know what you mean. 780. I'm still looking for somebody who gives me 800.
Okay. Ma'am, so we have another question for you. How many years of experience is advised for an MBA in abroad?
2 years at least.
So we have Anisha More asking us, she's an architect having an experience of 3 years, and she would want a guidance which could be MBA, which MBA would be suitable for her. Also the study material.
Yes. So study material, of course, Uday sir can guide, or Sahil rather. Sahil and Uday sir both can say. And, where the MBA is concerned, I think you should do a generic MBA, because that would definitely, with your 3 years experience and a generic MBA, would put you in a completely different league altogether. Yes, and hand over to Sir and Sahil to answer regarding the material.
About the material, I am very clear. Even to my own students, that is what I primarily use with them. The official guides, 2017 is a good one. Even the latest is a good one. 2016 edition is a very good guide. If you have these 3 books, that is all you need. Second, the official the MBA.com, their online preparation. There are about 6 tests. And I have been told by many students, mainly by Sahil himself, that Manhattan tests helped him a lot for preparation. Although he did not like every aspect of it, but I have heard from many students that is a very good thing. But my bet would be on the official guides. That is all, nothing else.
So we have
Sahil,
next question
can
for
add something to
Sahil.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on to what Uday sir mentioned, for my entire preparation, I never touched anything other than the guidebooks given by GMAT themselves. And other than the latest edition of that year, you also have an option of looking at additional guides provided for verbal and quant separately, which again are issued by the GMAT. So your original guidebook and those 2 books, these 3 will cover your, like if you're exercising daily 2 hours a day, this is enough prep for a month and a half to 2 months easy. And along with that, there are 6 tests that you can give provided by GMAT. If you go through those and you still need more practice, which was the case for me, then I chose Manhattan. I think there were 10 tests that they offer as a package. So that's the one that I bought.
So we have one more question for you, Sahil. How did you crack the quant?
Uh, so for quant, as Uday sir mentioned, right, it's very verbal in nature. So they don't play around with numbers as much they play around with those words. To be honest, sometimes it's as simple as 5 plus 7, but the way they would ask you that 5 and that 7 would confuse you a lot. So I mean, for a 2 minute question, I spent a minute and a half reading it and understanding it, and then I spent 30 minutes on the calculations. So that would I feel would be the best way to go about quant.
So we have next question for Aarti ma'am. Aarti ma'am, what is the difference between MBA and a STEM MBA?
Well, an MBA generally is non-STEM. That is, you get the concept of STEM and non-STEM is basically in the US for all you participants here. In US, if it is a non-STEM course, you only get a 1-year OPT. That's the 1-year work visa. But if you're in a STEM program, STEM means science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Then you get a 3-year OPT. So there are courses like an MBA could be STEM if it is IT, or any course that has a lot of mathematics, quant, analytics in it, like business analytics is also a STEM degree. So an MBA could be STEM if the course curriculum includes more than 50% of the course curriculum includes science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. That's the difference. Yes, next question.
Yeah, Sahil, so we have next question for you. How many times did you attempt GMAT?
So I attempted the GMAT twice. Actually, first time, as I mentioned, I was stuck on 680 for a long time. So I scored 680 on my first attempt. After which I kept practicing for another month and a half, and I still was stuck at 680. And then I crossed that threshold, and I was able to get my current score at 760.
Thank you. Ma'am, we have Atib here. Atib is specifically asking us for Ivy League colleges or universities considering freshers applications
Yes.
without any experience.
Well, you'll be surprised. There are many. Stanford itself, you can apply with no work experience. You can apply in Columbia with no work experience. You can apply in Duke's with no work experience. So the list actually goes on. It's very surprising, but it is definitely there. But the point is that when you apply as a fresher, you're in competition with people who have experience and are applying in these universities. That's the problem. But otherwise, there are top Ivy Leagues you can apply in with no experience as well. Thank you.
So we have next question for Uday sir. Uday sir, how long does it take for an average person to prepare for GMAT?
My answer to that is sorry. My answer to that is very simple. For an average person, it takes about 2.5 months, but it can take as long as 6 months, depending on how well you prepare. It does not depend only on the intelligence of the student. But to answer the question objectively, maximum 3 months, say.
Thank you, sir. So we have Piyush asking if he completes MBA abroad and come back to India for job, will he be able to get the same package as he would be getting in abroad? Aarti ma'am?
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
We have Piyush Agarwal asking if he comes back to India after the completion of an MBA in abroad, will he be able to get the same package as he have gotten in abroad?
No, I have to answer truthfully. Very difficult. Because see, the currency abroad, I mean, you're obviously going to choose a country like UK or US or Australia or Europe where the currency is 100 rupees makes £1, 80 rupees makes $1, 50 rupees makes one Singapore dollar. So obviously, when you come back, it is difficult to get similar salaries. It is difficult, not simple. But if you come back with experience of quite a number of years, then you may be able to get a job which is very highly paid, because in India also now we have all the top management jobs are very highly paid. So if you come back with international work experience along with your education, then you have a chance.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. So
Yes.
we have next question for Sahil. Sahil, what was unique about the NTU course?
Okay, so as I mentioned before, I wanted to specialize in entrepreneurship, and so I got into NYU as well, which is ranking wise, it's a little bit better compared to NTU overall college ranking. But the course I attended at NTU, it's titled Technopreneurship. That's technology entrepreneurship. So the entire duration of the course was focused only on entrepreneurship. So this is actually a piece of advice for everyone, that when you're targeting MBA, have a purpose of why you want to do that MBA. Only then will you get into any of these colleges there, because you need to know what you want to specialize in and then what you want to do after you're done with an MBA, maybe 5 or 10 years later. So yeah, I had all of that fixed before I thought of doing an MBA, and then I applied accordingly. So I didn't apply to let's say Harvard. I never applied there because I knew that they don't have a good entrepreneurship specialization.
So we have Piyush asking again. He has done his BSc Economics in Mathematics and Statistics. Which MBA would be preferable or suitable after this course? Aarti ma'am.
What has he done?
BSc in Economics with Mathematics and Statistics.
Okay. So if he's done that, there could be two choices. Either he could do an MBA in finance or strategy, or he could do a generic MBA. I think those would be the best choice.
We have next question for Uday sir. Uday sir, are classes compulsory for GMAT? Are there any tricks, or it completely depends upon an individual here?
It completely depends upon the individual. Although I would like you to think that classes are compulsory, unless you want to close my shop down. But seriously, they are not. It depends ultimately on the student, because I'll tell you why. I'll give you a very logical answer. Whether you join classes or not, ultimately it's going to depend on what you do, right? Classes can only be a catalyst. All the different material can only be a catalyst, but ultimately depends on what you do. But to be equally honest about this, when you get stuck at around 700, getting knowledge from a person will go a long way. Books are going to say the same thing, but when a person says it, it makes a difference. So I know I've given a very ambiguous answer, but it will depend whether you need to join classes or not upon your mentality. So you will have to decide that. I cannot decide it for you without even knowing you, right? That's it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So we have next question. Aarti ma'am, we have Sanjeevani asking. She's an undergraduate in physical therapy and wants to do an MBA course, but she's confused with an MHA or a master's in master's in hospital administration or an MBA. Which course she should opt for?
See, I always tell my students, follow your heart. So, because both these courses are excellent, MHA is also a very good course which can get you good job options, as an MBA is definitely a very good degree. So, which you should choose is what you enjoy doing. So, see, if you get into hospital administration or health why not health management? Besides hospital MHA, you can also get into health management, because this way you can leverage your past degree and experience. You can leverage your past degree, but if you think no, you need a change of, you don't want to be doing another degree related to health in any way, and you are looking to go into the corporate sector, then do an MBA. But if you enjoy your field, then why not an MHA, which is going to definitely get you a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
So we have Rohit Jha asking, can he get through a good university in the UK or Canada without giving GMAT, as he doesn't have a bandwidth to prepare for it, but have significant work experience.
Yes. Well, does he have work experience?
Yes, ma'am. It's 9 to 10 years of work.
Oh, excellent. So I want to tell you, UK as a country doesn't ask for a GMAT. There are about 5 to 6 universities only that require a GMAT in the UK, which are, of course, Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, Warwick, and Manchester, and Stratellite. So besides these, there may be one or two more. Otherwise, nobody asks for a GMAT. And there are excellent business schools in UK that you could apply with 8 to 10 years of experience. Please get in touch with us separately and we will guide you correctly. Absolutely. Next question.
So we have Atif asking, which MBA stream should a person go for if he is a chemical engineer?
Chemical engineer. Now, the question is, are you wanting to go with experience or without experience? See, that is very important for me to know, to be able to guide you. But I believe a generic MBA, that would be the best. For anybody from the sciences backgrounds, I would say a general MBA would actually teach you everything, because you need to learn. You need to learn the HR, the marketing, the finance. It's going to teach you everything. So you should do the generic one. Yes.
Ma'am, we have one more question. Is it worth it to leave a great job to do an MBA in COVID times?
Absolutely. Why? The reason is that an MBA is a degree that only pushes you forward in your career. It is what is going to be like the jack of your career. So yes, during COVID times, when we know promotions are not happening, why not use this time to do an MBA, which many a times professionals, want to do it, but keep postponing it because it's very difficult for them to leave their job and start studying. So I would say that this is really an excellent, time to do it. Now here, Akshita, there's another question by Anushka. How realistic is it to aim for good colleges with 85% in 12th, CGPA 7.2 years of experience in consultancy currently? What sort of colleges would you recommend for the same? I am assuming you have done your undergrad and completed your undergrad, because you have written 12th marks but not your undergrad, but that's absolutely fine. And if you have so much experience, you could do an MBA in consulting, and definitely we could guide you. But for this, again, I think Akshita is right in not pointing this question out, because this is very specific. I would have to do a search and selection for you and then give you the universities depending on your bachelor marks and the kind of experience you have. Yes. Akshita, over to you.
So I think people who have specific questions can always get in touch with us. So there are many people who are specifically putting in their own profiles, and I think we should be counseling you on one-on-one basis.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just a minute, there's one more general question here. Are IELTS and TOEFL compulsory for all colleges? Well, I want to tell you one thing. This is completely different country-wise. Completely. In UK, universities can waiver your IELTS and TOEFL, but the news is from 2021, it is going to be mandatory. In Europe, the whole of Europe, most countries, including France, do not require an IELTS at all. Ireland, it is mandatory. US, preferable to give. Canada, mandatory. So, you would have to actually get in touch with me, and we have to first zero down on the university and the country and then look at the exams that you have to give. Yes, thank you. Over to you, Akshita.
So we'll be answering, over the mail to all the questions asked here in the chat section. Yes. And I'll call it a wrap for this webinar. And I would like to thank our panelists and attendees for joining us. Please do not hesitate to contact us for any of your queries, either by email or on the phone. We are taking one-on-one counseling session on Zoom, WhatsApp, and Skype. Kindly note our details are displayed on the screen for your convenience. Have a great weekend and Jai Hind.